Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. It looks like we loaded the wrong scene here. Give me just a second. There we go. Good morning, everybody. How are we all doing? Yeah, we'll be using this one today. Move up a little bit. Oh, I am so sorry for being late. I ran a little bit late today. Let me pull my hair out of my face so that I quit blinking nonstop. I woke up late today for a good reason, though. Well, I wouldn't say good reason. More of an understandable reason. The whole night, I had a dream. There's no chat box for this one. There's not going to be a chat box for this one, Vanya. We don't need chat for the D&D yapping. It is all focused on just the vibes. Chat box won't work with this one due to the movements of the scene and my character here. Now, and I'm saying this also that if you want to edit this later, Vanya, it doesn't need a chat box. Now, the reason why I overslept was because the entire night I had a repeating dream that I was still asleep. Oh, we do need to fix that though. And that I was stuck streaming, kept getting raided over and over and over again, couldn't speak, and yeah, it was just a never ending stream that wouldn't allow me to actually do anything, which was a really weird nightmare to be part of. That no matter me trying to sleep, I was just still streaming, and I would keep waking up, not being able to tell if I was awake, in bed, or still streaming. So, I did not get a lot of sleep. You don't give me nightmares, Chad. I think I just streamed for too long yesterday, and then went to bed immediately. I'll have to keep them at like 2.5 hours and at max 3 hours. Any longer than that, and it wears me out too much. Now, Vanya, thank you for getting first. Saviati, thank you for getting second. And Lullaby, thank you for getting third. Do really appreciate it. And good morning, everybody who's here. And thank you for the subscription. You know, Wicked. I like your name, especially the wicked part. So, as promised, I'm going to be going over the basics of D&D today. And thank you for the follow, Pandemonium. As long as you all are still, interested in learning about the basics of D&D. What do you say? Do you all think you still want to learn about the D&D basics? Good, good. Now, you could learn all I'm going to go through by going through the player's handbook. I'll be referencing it a lot today. Oh. Interesting. Good. Get some donuts. Hurry up, hero. Get some donuts. So for those of you who haven't played D&D before, D&D is a tabletop role-playing game where you have the player and the dungeon master, or DM for short, In many games, this role is called a Game Master. But because, of course, it's Dungeons and Dragons, it is. Hmm. Yes, we're teaching you about Dungeons and Dragons today. So, because the game is called Dungeons and Dragons instead of a Game Master, you have a Dungeon Master. The general premise of the game is as such. One, the Dungeon Master will explain a scene, whether that be identity of characters, whether that is just describing the environment. Players will then say what they want to do, and the Dungeon Master then explains what happens through dice and other such things. But we're going to start with the very, very, very basics. The dice. Now, D&D is a D20 system. Meaning that it primarily relies on a 20-sided dice. This dice is used for everything from deciding what you can and can't do, attacking, some abilities, rolling your stats. Well, not rolling your stats actually, but for pretty much any function that you do, the D20 is going to come into play. And the other dice are the D4, the D6, D8, D10, D12, and a D100, also known as a percentile die. Now, if you do play D&D, first off, what the D stands for is just dice. Dice 6 and 7. And the number refers to how many sides the dice has. Things like the D4, D6, D8, D10, D12 are most often used for dealing damage, rolling the stats of the game, or rolling your health. Thank you for the follow, and also good morning, John and Mitchie, and Echo and Kallist. Thank you for the follow, Vicky. So before you start playing, make sure you have yourself a set of dice, as they will be needed. You can always use something like like Google or some dice rollers online, but it's always nicer to have your own physical set of dice. Though, if you don't have your own yet, I guarantee whatever dungeon master you're playing with will have at least an extra set of dice. Now, one more thing about dice. When playing this, there's going to be situations where you're going to see something like this. It might say 3d8 plus 5. Okay? And so to break that down, what that means is you want 3 dice, so 3d is going to be the 8-sided dice, d8. And after you roll, you will add plus 5 to that number. For a very similar connotation, if you have 1d3, 1 dice, 3 sides, 1d4 plus 3, and continue that way. And if you ever see something called a D2, that's just a coin. It's just a coin. You can just flip a coin and you're fine. ultimate dark chocolate does sound awful. Now, we're going to talk about ability checks. We'll be getting to how to actually make the character and everything, but I want to discuss also the ability checks, just so you can understand what those are before we bring them up again later. Now, in D&D, to determine how strong, fast, healthy, wise, intelligent your character is, there are these 6 ability scores. These are strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. They're pretty self-explanatory if you've played any RPGs, but we'll go into depth on them later. Their number, like what you're going to have for any player, is going to range between 3 to 18 in any of these. These will come up when trying to perform specific tasks, okay? So let's say, for instance, you want to try to lift something up, and your dungeon master will say, okay, I want you to roll me a strength check. You're going to roll the d20. You're going to see what the ability modifier is, which will come up later and I'll get into more depth. And you'll add that ability modifier to whatever you get on the dice. In this way, you see how well you did with that task at that time, while also relying on your character's natural ability. This betrays your character's, effort that they've put into building whatever stat. Because a person who has been working out non-stop all the time will be stronger than a character who hasn't. And so even if both of them, even if both of them only kind of succeed at something, the person who's buff is going to be doing better than a person who has no strength at all. Along with this is something called a DC, which is called a difficulty class. And this is what is used to determine whether a player succeeds or does not succeed. So you roll the d20, you add your ability modifier, and you're trying to beat another number. Let's say the DM says this is a DC 10. It's not difficult, but it's not easy. It's right in the center. You roll a 7, but you have a +3 in the ability. You make it to 10, you meet it, so you beat it, and you succeed at what you're trying to do. Another concept to talk about with the d20 here is going to be your armor class, which we will again get into more depth later. But this is, again, a meet or beat situation where you roll the dice, you see if you hit this number, and if you do, you're allowed to hit whatever creature you're attacking, and if not, either they deflect it or their armor's too strong, that sort of thing. And lastly, when talking about dice, is advantage and disadvantage. And this is a unique thing that D&D has, where a situation might, be a difficult thing or might be something that you're really good at. Let's say, for instance, Kind of, yeah. With disadvantage and advantage. Let's say, for instance, your character is standing in the mud, right? And they want to push a boulder. Well, the mud is going to be slippery. So the dungeon master might say, okay, you can do the strength check. But because you're in mud, it's going to be really hard for you to do. So you're going to roll at disadvantage. So you'll roll the dice twice. And you have to take the lower number. Or let's say you're in a situation where maybe you're in a muscle building competition and your character is really strong and he's all excited and he has been practicing. Well, the DM might be like, okay, well, you're warmed up, you're raring to go, you are so experienced at this that this is an easier thing for you. You're super ready, you get advantage. In that situation, you're going to roll the dice twice and you take the higher number. Good morning, Patrick. I'm doing fine. And one thing to remember while we go through everything is that when it comes to D&D, specific will always beat general. So, for instance, characters usually do not start with a longbow proficiency, okay? We can talk about inspiration real quick. Sure. Inspiration is something that a dungeon master can grant you. They can grant you this for any reason at all. Yes, well, kind of. Okay, well, let's slow down here a little bit. Let's slow down a little bit. I wouldn't say it's a curse or a buff. Above 10 is a success usually, or depending on it. It's higher numbers are successes, lower numbers are failures. The higher the number, the higher the chance of success. Not curse versus buff, but success versus failure. And thank you for the stretch. Okay. Inspiration is something that dungeon masters are able to grant you at any point in the game for whatever reason. Usually it's used to encourage roleplay, for instance. Oh, you played this character, and that's exactly what that character would do. You know what? You have an inspiration. It grants you a one-time option of using a dice to its advantage, or to have advantage on a situation. So you'll basically have a mark on your sheet. You'll be like, oh yeah, because I did this good earlier, and I want to roll this now. Let me pull out my advantage dice. You roll it, you do well, and then you lose that inspiration. It's just a little extra thing that a dungeon master can use to grant people things. I have a friend, what she does is, at the beginning of every session, she'll say, hey, whoever can tell me what we did last time and does it the best will be granted one inspiration. This encourages players to take notes, and it rewards those who have been doing note-taking and who remember everything. Plus, it means that you don't have to wrap up the session every single time at the beginning. Because, I mean, remember, even if somebody's super, into the D&D session, it's been a minimum of a week since you last played, maybe months. So you want somebody to go back over it and explain it. Good morning, mac and cheese. Good morning, night blossom. You can have up to 3. Usually, at least that's usually what it is. Some people allow more or less, but they don't want you stacking too many because then you're doing everything well. And there's one more general rule. Oh, specifics, we didn't talk about specific beats general. There are many rules in D&D that cover like a large amount of things. Maybe it'll be like characters can't breathe underwater, for instance, right? Well, certain races can breathe underwater. And so just because characters can't breathe underwater does not mean that the fish guy can't breathe underwater. Specific will always beat general. So you want to look at the minor instances over the larger ones. A general thing will never overdo a specific one. Might be a little confusing, but it's will make more sense and be a little bit more obvious as we talk about like races and other characters, okay? Oh, I'm sorry you're not doing well, Ocean. Well, I hope you feel better soon. Didn't sleep because you're feeling sick. Good morning, Mac. I'm very good, thank you. Okay, and the last general rule, that's very important, is to always round down. Whenever you divide a number in the game, round down if you end up with a fraction, even if the fraction is 1/2 or greater. And so the reason why this is important is because you'll have things like fire resistance or bludgeoning damage resistance or whatever, where somebody will swing a sword, hit you, and you'll be like, well, I have slashing resistance. And let's say they would have done 5 damage, split in half. What's 5 cut in half? It's 2.5. So instead of doing 3 damage, it's going to do 2 damage. And that 1 health point can be any kind of, it can be the difference between life and death. Hi, Vo. Hey, Vo. How you doing? You did amazing on that art, by the way. Okay. Streaming a little bit long, by the way, today. I will just need to pull up my work computer at one point. Okay. So, now let's get into the more of what is D&D, how does it break down, that kind of thing. And I know all those general rules were like a lot to take in at once, but I promise we'll go over them again when it comes to the specifics in each character and space and slot. Whether we're talking about abilities or we're talking about combat, they'll make sense. Oh, no, Vanya, I did not. I think when I timed you out, it might have removed that. I'll have to give that back to you right after stream. Thank you for letting me know. Okay. So, good morning. D&D is an adventure game. This much is obvious. It has 3 pillars of adventure. You have the exploration, the social interaction, and the combat, which is what these rules mostly focus on. Exploration is just going to be things, players say, hey, I want to go here, I want to go there, and the DM explains what happens and how they go about it. There are things like needing to check on survival and hunting and reading maps, that kind of thing. That's important. Building a campsite, sleeping under the stars. Social interaction, which I know is very difficult for some of us here. It's going to be all about, deception, convincing people, talking, getting information. And then combat. D&D is heavily, hi, mac and cheese, a combat-based game. Most of the rules feel like they're around combat. because it can be one of the coolest bits in this game. That being said, a lot of D&D sessions that you do are not going to be combat focused. Something that's written very well will have maybe one session that has a few combat encounters, another one that's all about just exploring and living off the land, another that's just, interacting with characters and players. Just because the game has more rules about combat does not mean that this is just a combat game. And I only mention this because I've had players like that who are so focused on combat that they forget everything else that makes D&D great. You know? They come at it like they're trying to build a video game character, like they're playing Oblivion or something, and all they want to do is fight creatures and get better armor. But this is an adventure that you build together, a story you're writing. So write a story. You wouldn't want to write a story where it's just a guy beating people for 8 hours and then it's done. You want a story that has everything. Love, distrust, betrayals, arguments, mystery, mayhem. Exactly. And even min-maxing can be fine, as long as you're playing for it. Because guess what? If you min-max your character all about combat, you're going to be awkward in social situations. And I like that in a character. Sure. Thank you for asking, Savvy. Min-maxing refers to making a character the strongest it possibly can be. You take the highest numbers and you put them in the best places, and you take out the weaknesses and make that your lowest thing. Min-maxing refers to what you're doing with the numbers, maximizing and minimizing. So, for instance, if you were to make a fighter, you'd put everything into making him like as strong and healthy as he can be, choosing only the best skills, getting the best weapons. You're trying to make the ultimate fighter. Players who do that are called min-maxers. And it means that they also, they're not putting things into places just for the fun of it. They're doing what is the best thing. And this could be great, for a combat encounter. But it really takes away from, your character. Because humans, people, anyone has flaws, has strengths and weaknesses. And if you try to minimize those, all you're making is a flesh lump that deals damage. And it feels like you're getting rid of the personality. You want people to fail at things. Because failing at things is human. Now, magic. Magic is very key to D&D. We will talk about its levels and its spells and how it casts it, but in the world of Dungeons and Dragons, magic is rare. People who cast it are, extraordinarily talented. Common folk might see it as, evident, as demonic or whatever. But D&D has a lot of magic, and we'll go into understanding spells and all that, but that's going to be much later. Just let you know that happens, okay? Now, we're going to get into the start. That was all kind of a prologue. We're going to talk about making your character. And I'm going to disagree with the book a little bit here. But we'll tell you what the book says. And I'll tell you what I say when making a character. Now, when making a character, the first thing that's suggested is to pick a race. There's all sorts of races in D&D, and they're making more constantly. Dwarves, elves, halflings, humans, tritons, turtles, if you want to be a turtle. Warforged are robotic, sentient things whose origins are a bit mysterious, and goblins and bugbears, and there's just so many things you can choose. At the time of the player's handbook writing, these each had unique stats, okay? And you would pick one based on what kind of stats you wanted. So you pick a dwarf. A dwarf has like +2 to strength and +1 to constitution, or might be reverse. And each race usually has these benefits, right? They'll have a +2 to one stat, dexterity, the ability scores we were talking about earlier, and then a +1 to another stat. And this way, each race has its thing that it is more skilled at and better at. They'll often also have sub-races. For instance, elves have wood elves, dwarves have mountain dwarves, and the Dunmar, which are the underdark dwarves. Halflings have, no, what are they called again? No, they're different kinds. Humans have humans and variant humans. And these can change some of the natural abilities these characters get. They'll have some talents. Maybe they'll have better in one stat, or they just are naturally skilled with certain tools, or being sneaky and stealthy. As of the more recent versions of 5e, they've added a variant rule that you can choose any race and then choose whatever stats you want. Do a +2 to one stat and a +2 to another stat. The reason this is because, sure, a dwarf might be strong and sturdy by birth, but by the time an adventurer is going on an adventure, they have spent time learning their craft. A fighter has wielded a blade, a rogue has been lockpicking and sneaking, and sure, maybe the character naturally is just more bulky or slender, but your training is going to determine what you're skilled at, not your birth. And so you can use either one. I do like the idea, though, of using the races. So yeah, you start with your race, and then you pick your class. No, I'm going to pull this up real quick because I can't remember exactly how many D&D classes there officially are. Let's see. 13. There are currently 13 classes. So what I suggest usually doing, if you're going off of each race has a certain benefit to their ability score, I would say pick what kind of position you want to take. Barbarian, bard, cleric, druid, fighter, monk, paladin, ranger, rogue, sorcerer, warlock, wizard, artificer. Because each of these classes are going to benefit from different stats. So if you're choosing a race that has a +2 to strength, you don't want to play a wizard, because the wizard ain't going to go up and punch people. Or if you pick a race that has an increased charisma, who wants to do magic based on the ability to talk or plead to the gods, you don't want to pick a fighter who's going to be running up and bashing people, because he's not going to be talking to them when he's fighting. Now, classes are what really makes a lot of these things unique. They're going to have different abilities, proficiencies. They're going to change and get stronger as time progresses. But so pick something that just seems like it would be fun. Don't think about it too hard. You can figure it out more later. These classes evolve over time as you level up. Now, D&D was written with the idea of experience points, which relies so heavily on combat. You've all played MMOs, you've all played video games, so you all understand how experience points work. You kill a thing, that thing gives you a certain number. Once you hit that number to another number, you move up and you gain new abilities and such. Most dungeon masters I've met don't play with a system. Instead, they make what is called a milestone system. What this means is that as you do things in the campaign, you'll hit certain milestones, whether that is the end of a story arc, maybe something that makes your character develop as a person, things that really change the way you are as a player or character. And that is what the Dungeon Master will use to determine your level up. For instance, in my campaign right now, my first level up was when the characters met the first monstrosity of the campaign. That really kind of changed this from we're just looking into things, to, this is a lot darker of a story, and we've just run into the first major threat. And so at every point where there's going to be a major shift in the story, that's when I'll level them up. But in other campaigns I've seen where it's been something like Dungeons and Daddies, a character became a better father, or a character learned something about themselves and has now matured beyond where they were. You can use this for roleplay or anything just to make it more seeing humanity's natural growth printed on paper. Okay, we've talked about how the races each have unique abilities, proficiencies, and gain certain skill stats, plus in their ability score. We've talked about the class. We've talked about leveling. So now we're going to get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty here and talk about the ability scores, which we have mentioned earlier. I guess we can talk about hit dice first. Dungeons and Dragons is much like a video game in the sake of you have health points or hit points. These are determined by hit dice. When you're building a character, each class has a different type of hit dice. Barbarians use a d12. I believe wizards use a d6. And what these are is every time you level up, you're granted another one of these hit dice. You roll the dice, and you add that amount of health that you roll, plus Constitution, but we'll talk about it more when we're actually playing, to your character's health pool, and that determines how much damage you can take. The hit dice are also important for things like short rests, which again will come up later, or for certain abilities. But just to know, D&D uses an HP system or health point system that can go up and down depending on abilities, attacks, etc. Okay, ability scores. I think I will be making a section in the Discord all about Dungeons and Dragons so I can provide resources. But, oh, that is very cool, Casey. Ability scores are going to be one of the primary things that you're going to need to pay attention to when playing D&D. They determine what your character is really good at and bad at. They affect the skills that you have, how you react to challenges, how much damage you do. Everything is affected by the ability score. They are easily to say the foundation of what your character is, okay? We've talked about what we have: strength, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And so I'm going to talk about them in more specifics. Strength measures your natural athleticism, your bodily power. It's going to be very important for barbarians, fighters, paladins who rely on their strength for dealing damage and for getting through challenges. Dexterity is going to be your physical agility, your reflexes, balance, poise, your ability to roll out of danger, dodge and move and be sneaky. It is a stat very important for monks, the rangers, and rogues, as those abilities is going to be how easily they can get out of situations, but also how easily they can move something like a dagger or a rapier. Constitution. Constitution, for those of you who haven't heard the word before, is going to be thought of as your health, your stamina, your vital force. It is, of course, important for everybody because, that's what keeps us alive. But it is most important for barbarians who like to get hit. Because so much of the barbarian's toolkit comes around being hit and hitting back. But yes, it affects your ability to handle poisons or keep down food that's gone bad or so much. Next, we have intelligence, your mental acuity, your information recall, your analytical skills. Basically, intelligence is your ability to be a nerd. Very important for wizards, because wizards and artificers, spells rely on their ability to recall information, as wizards learn their magic through book study, which is going to tell you a lot about what stats are important to a character is how they've learned their magic, or how they've learned their skills. Next we have wisdom, which relates to awareness, intuition, and insight. To kind of explain the difference here between intelligence and wisdom, wisdom is something that you gain through, living life, that you gain through actions and seeing things directly. That's why when it comes to I need to see if this person is lying, it's going to rely on wisdom. Perception. Good morning, hot holy woman. Thank you for the follow. Looking around and trying to see things or discovering people's intent. Well, intelligence is going to be important for remembering things from books, history, for solving puzzles, that sort of thing. So wisdom is important for clerics and druids. And lastly, charisma. And I'm going to bring this up because this is very important to me personally. Charisma does not allow you to roll a dice and make a thing happen. Because remember, D&D is a role-playing game, okay? And technically, I do understand that you could say, I want to persuade them, roll persuasion, cool, they're persuaded. But where is the fun in that? Charisma measures your confidence, your eloquence, your leadership ability, important to bards, sorcerers, warlocks, and paladins, as they take their magic from what they're able to make magic do, basically. Not talk magic into doing things, but using their will to make magic happen. Charisma is going to be used for things like persuading and intimidating people, but you have to remember that your DM controls how difficult and how easy things are. So if you go up to a person and say, hey, pretty lady, I want a doink. Well, you know, she's a nice, fine lady, classy, doesn't really give in to doinking requests that easily. This is going to be a really difficult chance to convince them. But if you go, hey, I want to walk up to her and say, you're more stunning than the starlight, you hair and eyes and lips just draw me in, and there's nothing I wouldn't give to just spend a single night with you. Maybe the DM gives you a better chance, and the difficulty becomes a little bit less. And DMs also remember, you can scale up the difficulty at any point in time. There's not any sort of official thing something has to be. It is your story as well as the players. Have fun with it. But I say this because so many players will go into these situations and forget that this is a role-playing game and will just want to roll numbers and get better numbers. But don't play. Have fun. Play. Alright. Does anyone have any questions they would like me to go back over? Anything that I've gone over too quickly or you want me to step back for? Good morning, Calypsy. No. Is anyone still awake? Well, don't worry. Things will come back up as we read along. Good. Now, let's see. Good morning, Keeper. I'm doing well. Also, let me see if there's been any redeems that I haven't been paying attention to. Nope, still good. Cozy, glad to hear. Good, I'm glad. And if anybody does have any questions, feel free to stop me whenever, and I'll slow down and go back over it. We've talked about hit points, your hit dice. We've talked about the ability scores. Next, we're going to talk about proficiency bonuses. Okay. Now, not everyone is equal when it comes to all things. Some people are going to naturally have certain skills and are going to have practice to learn certain things. To start with, we have things like what weapons you know how to wield. A wizard who has been studying books is not going to have been trained in the sword. A barbarian may not have studied history. So proficiency bonus is a way to translate this training experience into numbers. So, When you are making your class, you'll see a table. It's a proficiency table that will show you how your proficiency is advancing as your character learns and grows. Starts with a +2, can be +3, +4 as time goes on. This number will get added to anything that you're proficient in. Let's say you're proficient in wielding a great sword. You'll roll your normal numbers. You'll add whatever abilities modify your attack. And then you get a flat +2 because you know how to use a great sword. Meanwhile, somebody's picking one up for the first time is not going to have that. This way, you're not fully limited in the things you can do. The difference is just how experienced you are with it. And this applies to many things. Your attack rolls to hit, attack rolls for spells, your ability checks with both your skills and your tools that you're proficient in, saving throws, which we talked about how we can roll something to achieve something or do something. A saving throw is how good you are at defending against something. It uses similar things, but it's calculated different. We'll talk about that later when it comes up. As well as your saving throws for DCs for spells. Classes are going to determine what you're proficient in with weapons, with your saving throws, as well as some skill and tool proficiencies. Your background, that we'll be talking about later, may give you additional skill and tool proficiencies. And the race that you pick will also give you additional skills and tool proficiencies. When you're making your character, just make sure to note all of these down so that when you go back to it, you'll be able to, actually use them properly. I think when we do this next time, I'll actually get a character sheet and we can walk through building it together. Next, we did talk about ability scores, but I haven't told you how to get them yet. Which, to be fair, if you have a good DM, you don't need to know this. The DM will walk you through building a character. We'll show you how these different things work. But you want to know in advance. And it's good to be an educated player. So, there are a few different systems for determining your ability scores. The first and most suggested is one that allows your character to be different. You roll four 6-sided dice. You record the total of the 3 highest dice. You do this 5 times. And then you take those numbers and you apply them to whatever abilities you want. This way, things are kind of random. Each character, starts different, can end differently. Some will have more than others. But this also causes a disparity in stats. What if somebody got really lucky? Oh, chat, we're about to take a little break here. There's about to be an ad break. So we'll take a minute here while the ad goes off. Unless the ad doesn't go off. Did anybody get an ad? There was supposed to be an ad. Oh, have fun, Keeper. Well, we'll take a quick 5-minute here and be right back. And then we'll keep talking. Sound good? Okay. Moss, I didn't realize you're traveling. I feel like I did know that you're going to be traveling, but stay safe. Mm. Mm. All right. You ready? Now, we were discussing the ability score modifier. No, not ability score modifiers. How to get your ability scores. Hmm. Now, have fun Be safe, okay? Ability scores. Mm-hmm. Yes, little bean. Today I'm teaching people the basics of D&D. Thank you so much for the follow. Did you come in and pull a gun on me? Are you trying to rob me of my D&D? How dare you, little bean? How dare you? Leave it at the door. Be a good bean. Alright, alright. Ability scores and how to get them, okay? Now, on my D4, you got triangle obsession. So, the first way of doing it is roll 4d6, put down all the numbers, and only add the 3 highest. Another way to do it that people do is you do the same thing, roll 4 dice, only keep the 3 highest, but you re-roll ones. I allow 1 reroll at my table per 1 because we don't want people to have the lowest number. But if the dice gods say that you're getting a 1 and you roll a 1 twice, I'm sorry. That's the way the cookie crumbles. The other method, 2 other methods, is you can just take the standard array, 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8, or you can use a point-buy calculator in which you're allowed 27 points. And the higher you get, the more points it takes. This allows you to kind of choose where you want your stats to be. But it does lean into min-maxing. So it's up to you if you want to allow your players this, or if you want to be allowed this. Now my personal favorite is the worst one. We don't have the ability to roll a d20 here. You start at the top. You go down the ability scores. You roll 3 dice. And what you get, you get. I like this because it forces you to make character choices you wouldn't otherwise. And you don't get to put where the skills go. So you roll your abilities first and then determine everything later. You got luck and got high charisma, make a bard. You got luck and got high strength, barbarian. But this pushes people out of their comfort zone, which personally I think is great for D&D. You don't want to make a character that's too much like you. You'll never go beyond it. Mm-hmm. My phone is letting me know that my friend went live. Thank you for the lurknings. Oh. For the variant choice that I explained earlier, the point buy system, there is a chart to better understand like how many points is needed for each increase in ability score. But, you know, I don't want to try to walk you all through a chart unless you want me just to read out numbers to you for a little while here. And so now you have your ability scores, you have your class picked out, you have your race, you have the basics of a character sheet. Now it's time to describe your character. At this point, when you pick out your alignment, your ideals, your bonds, your flaws, and your background. And please, if you're making a background, spend a little time on it. A good rule of thumb for a background is to make 3 characters that were important to you in the past and explain how they were important to you. Let's say you're a gladiator in an arena. You have maybe somebody that you trained with who taught you your abilities. You have a nobleman who bet on you constantly. And you have a rival in the gladiatorial arena. So, what does this tell the DM? It says that you value the people who helped you grow. Perhaps you recognize those who influence from a distance. And you have that competitive spirit. Your DM can then take those characters related to those characters or anything, and can bring those up in the story later on. It also helps a lot with descriptions of situations. So, you're fighting, and the DM can be like, you recognize the spirit of rivalry in this enemy combatant. He reminds you of those that you fought in the arenas, and what you know, he is nowhere near as strong as the only one who ever beat you. And you can tell the player about the difficulty of the fight. You can make the character feel like they're more in the scene. And you really can, sell the situation instead of just, yeah, there's a guy in front of you and he's stronger than you or weaker than you. All right, go fight. The more you do with the background and description of who you were in the past, the more the DM can make you feel like you're part of the story, if they're good. So, don't be lazy. Do a good job with your background. We've already talked about the ability scores, but just a quick run through again. High strength is going to be like a burly, strong man. This is going to be more of, describing your character. Strength, you're going to have big muscles. Dexterity, you're going to be more lithe and slim. Constitution, hardy and healthy. Intelligence, nerd, inquisitive, studious. Wisdom, more somebody who's empathetic. I bet you do, Slarian. Charisma, the flirty, the conversationally astute. Int is a dumb stat. Depends on what you're playing, but I get you. Next. Equipment. Good morning, Allie. Now, when you pick your class, you'll be given a set of equipment based on your class. Some have light armor, some have robes, some have spell casting focuses, some have swords and spears. You'll need to record this down right away because it's going to determine what kind of fighting you can do. How much gold do you start with? But this is important because your equipment also determines your AC and your damage. Now you'll hear this term a lot. Your DM will say, hey, what's your AC? Or does this hit? Your AC is also known as your armor class, okay? Your armor class is how easily you can take damage or you can dodge. This number is 10, then straight up the number 10, plus dexterity. So if you have no armor, you just take whatever your dexterity modifier is, your ability modifier that we got earlier, add it to the 10, and you can take up to that being rolled. Now, if you get armor, armor will add additional things. A +1 here, a +2 there, depending on the armor. They'll make you less stealthy, make you a bit heavier, but that means that you can take more damage. Or it's harder to hit you. Everyone in D&D has an AC. Those you attack, and those on your team. So, that is what you roll against. We talked about earlier, dealing attacks and stuff. So I'll walk you through how this will go. You want to attack a creature with a sword, for instance. You're going to roll your dice. If you're proficient in the weapon, which we talked about earlier, you have your +2, so you take whatever number's on the d20. Let's say you got a 5. You didn't roll too high. You're going to add your +2. Now, because this weapon is a strength weapon, you're going to add your strength score to it. Let's say you have a +3. So you have your 5, +2, +3. Now you have 10. Now the thing that you're fighting is kind of squishy. It's very easy to hit. And his AC is only 9. Well, you hit it. And now you go about dealing damage. But let's say what you're fighting is some giant rock golem or a dude with a massive shield. You only got a 10. His shield and the way he's built means that his AC armor class is 16, 17, 18, whatever. You swing your sword and it bounces off the shield. You deal no damage. That ends your ability to attack. Does AC make sense? The same goes reverse though. The dungeon master will be playing, let's say, the squishy guy, and the squishy guy rolls. He gets 2 on the d20, does really bad. He's dexterous, and he's using a dagger. He has proficiency in the dagger, adds the 2, has a +3 in his dexterity. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You remember that your AC is 10 plus whatever, so no matter what, he's underneath it. He stabs and misses, and nothing happens. But if he's more skilled or rolls higher, he stabs, hits, and then he's going to roll his damage like you just did. So armor class is just how easy it is to get hit. That kind of thing. Well, you did well, Shiny. Yes. Exactly. Exactly, Solarian. Now, some spells and class features might give you different ways to calculate your AC. They might increase it or decrease it. Some classes have natural armor as part of their body, so your AC can change a bit based on the situation. Just something to keep track of. But you should always know your AC at all times, because this can come out at any point in time. Ideally, your DM knows, but it's fun to say, hey, does a 23 hit your armor class? And then your level 1 player looks at you and goes, yeah, I think a 23 might hit. And you can see the light leave their eyes. I'm not saying you want to do that regularly, but you know. Next, weapons. We briefly talked about weapons, but weapons are what's going to determine the amount of damage you can deal to things. Yes. You have melee weapons, you have ranged weapons. Now, a simple rule of thumb is that most melee weapons are going to use your strength stat to both hit and deal damage, because it doesn't matter how well you wield them as long as you wield them heavily. Which I can add a confusing thing about this later, about my opinions on how strength and dexterity are calculated, but this is a game, and so it's simplified to make things work a little bit better. Now, not all melee weapons are going to have strength. If they have finesse, you can use dexterity instead. You don't have to, you can still use strength, but you can use your dexterity. So you beat a man to death with a rapier, or you can move it intelligently and stab at vital points. That's when dexterity is more beneficial. Ranged weapons typically use dexterity. Unless they have a thrown property. So, bows, slings, that sort of thing. Darts. Blowgun. Crossbow. They're all going to use dexterity. The only exception is if a weapon has a thrown property, which means it can be yeeted at people. In that case, it's going to use strength. But once we go through all of this, we get all the basics, I'm going to actually make a character with you all. We'll run through combat, and that way you can see how this all goes, okay? But yes. So, to re-go over, we've talked about races, and how each race gives you different ability scores, proficiencies, and such. We've talked about classes, and how they also have proficiencies in weapons, armor, skills, and things, and how they grow. We've talked about the leveling system, and what each ability score represents. We discussed hit points and proficiency bonuses, and how to determine your ability scores. We've talked about the basics of equipment and armor class. So, let's see where we should go next. We could go into the individual races, walk you through what the player's handbook says on each, and just read that out, but I'm not sure that's the best place to start. Do you have any questions? Or is there anything that you're more curious about in D&D? What are you all more interested about next? I have played each of the base races. They're all lots of fun. Trying to think of where we want to go next with this. Do you gotta have books to play? No, you don't. But let me give you this. So there are resources online. There are plenty of resources online, and I suggest using them to your fullest extent. But there is the player's handbook. That's going to be your basics. Here. This is going to be a breakdown of all of the classes, races, backgrounds, and such. And I have a few resources for Dungeon Masters themselves that I will post probably in the Discord later. Because the fact is, Dungeons and Dragons is trying to push towards a pay-to-use system where you have to sign up for their websites, which, not really a big fan of. So I want to get as many resources as I can for free, and I'll make a little repository of all of those. What are you confused about, Savvy? Would it help you if we made a character together? Okay. Let's see if I can find something here. No, you're totally fine. There you go. There's a character sheet that you can use. What time is it? Ooh, I don't have a lot of time for this. We might need to save this. Okay. How about this, chat? I'm going to be doing ASMR tomorrow as well. I'll make sure to show up at the right time since it is Saturday. Oh, today's Friday of singing lessons. And we can go through everything. On Saturday, I can walk you through making the character, filling out all the stats, picking out a class, background, and all of that. Would that be interesting to you? Because we cannot make a character in only 10 minutes, unfortunately. I'll bring out real dice and we'll roll them together. Addie, would that work for you as well? Good. Perfect. No, Gigi, you're totally fine. What do you mean? Did you interrupt what? Good. Well then, lovelies. So that is the plan. Tomorrow, I'll actually walk you through making a character. So go ahead. Get that character sheet. Download it. It's totally fun, Robin. Remember, tomorrow's stream does start at 6 a.m. my time. And we'll walk you through it. Step by step. And once you have a character, I'll show you a mock fight. Some mock roleplay scenarios. Maybe I'll even make you all a map that we can play on. And I can show you how the fights and everything works. Okay? We'll just call this the introductory course. And tomorrow's the practical. And if you all enjoy this, maybe we'll do one-shots with players. Oh, it takes me like a minute to make a map and throw out some characters. Or do a social encounter. I can write that in my sleep. Heck, I could probably write y'all a campaign right now. Plan it out. Have a whole new god and faction system with about 2 or 3 hours max. Taverns are classic. Taverns are where people meet. Ideas are shared and people communicate. Taverns are a good starting point. I love taverns. I want to do the... Where is it? Ah, this one. I like this one. Okay. Good. Good. D&D talk went well. Any comments, questions, or complaints? Besides stream not being long enough and me arriving late. You will, you will. You will understand it so well, trust me. I had to play it a few times before I really understood it. And even after my first time playing, I still didn't know what was going on. You'll learn as you play, and things get easier each time. Okay. Okay. I'll do some one-shots with people. Maybe we'll do a weekly one-shot where I'll invite people from the community or in the Discord. Sit them down, and we'll do a short 2 to 3 hour session where you can experience what it is like to play D&D. Would you all like that? And yes, I will give you all the resources you need to make your first character. Hi, and thank you so much for the follow. Great. Yes, because chatting will be needed for people. And I'll walk you all through the different ability score systems and everything, so that you too can know what to do when you're making your first character. Okay? Good. Now, it is time for me to find somebody to raid, because I have work in 5 minutes. And unfortunately, streaming doesn't pay the bills yet, though we are working towards it. We may soon... I'm doing great, how are you doing? We may soon get a coffee partnership, in which case you lovely, lovely people can buy the coffee of my flavor. I'm hoping to get a blonde roast. We'll see if they'll allow me to get a blonde roast. Blonde roasts are the best chat. They have the most caffeine and the mildest flavor. Low in tannins. A very light, delicious flavor. But for now, we're gonna raid into Yuki here. They're doing more traditional ASMR. So you lovely, lovely people go say hi to them, okay? Hoshi, no, I'm raiding out. No, Hoshi, I'm about to leave. Oh, I'm so sorry, Hoshi. Can we get a shout out for Hoshi? Oh. It's all good. It's all good. But you all have been very lovely. We're going to be reading out to a different ASMR artist. And tomorrow, we're going to be making your first D&D character. I'm so sorry, Oshi, if I didn't have to work. If I didn't have to work, I'd keep going longer. But work calls. Now, we're gonna do classic little EP raid. Yes, tomorrow we'll be making our D&D characters. Be there or be square. And for now, y'all have a lovely, lovely day. Bye. Mwah.